The ruby. On a tall column in the city there is a statue of the Happy Prince. He is covered with gold. He has 2 blue sapphires for eyes. On his sword there is a big red ruby. He is very beautiful. Everyone in the city likes the statue of the Happy Prince. "Look at the Happy Prince," says a mother to her little boy. "He never cries. He is always happy." One night a little swallow flies over the city. His friends are in Egypt and he wants to go there too. He sees the statue on the tall column. "Oh, what a beautiful statue! I have a golden bedroom. I can sleep here, near the prince's feet," he says to himself. He puts his head under his wing. Suddenly a big drop of water falls on him. Then another drop falls. How strange! There aren't any clouds in the sky. But it's raining. Another drop falls and the swallow looks up. The Happy Prince is crying. There are tears on his golden face. His face is very beautiful. The little swallow is sad. "Who are you?" he asks. "I am the Happy Prince." "Why are you crying?" asks the swallow. "The people in the city call me the Happy Prince. In the castle I was happy. Everything there was beautiful. But now I am on this high column and I can see all the misery in my city. My heart is made of metal but I cry. Look over there. There is a poor house. One of the windows is open. I can see a woman. She is very poor. There is a boy in bed. He is not well. He wants some oranges. His mother has nothing to give him except water. He is crying. Swallow, little swallow, can you take her the ruby from my sword?" "I must go to Egypt," says the swallow. "My friends are there. They fly up and down the Nile River. They talk to the flowers. They sleep in the tomb of the great king." "Swallow, swallow, little swallow," says the prince, "can you stay with me for one night and be my messenger? The boy is very ill and his mother is very sad." The Happy Prince is sad. The little swallow is sorry. "It is very cold here," he says, "but I can stay with you for one night and be your messenger." "Thank you, little swallow," says the prince. The little swallow takes out the red ruby from the prince's sword. Then he flies away with the ruby. He flies over the houses of the city. He passes by the church and sees statues of white angels. He passes by the palace and hears lovely music. He flies over the river and sees the ships. At last he comes to the poor house and looks inside. The sick boy is in bed and his mother is sleeping. The little swallow puts the ruby on the table. Then he flies back to the Happy Prince and says, "The night is cold, but I am warm now." Part 2. The Sapphire. The next day the little swallow has a bath in the river. There is a professor walking over the bridge. What a strange thing! "A swallow in winter," says the professor. "Tonight I go to Egypt," says the swallow. So he visits the public monuments of the city. When the other winter birds see him they are surprised and say, "What a beautiful bird." This makes the little swallow very happy. In the evening the swallow looks at the Happy Prince and says, "I am going to Egypt." "Swallow, swallow, little swallow," says the prince, "can you stay with me another night?" My friends are waiting for me in Egypt. Tomorrow, they are flying up the river. They are visiting the statue of the god Memnon. At midday the yellow lions go to the water and drink. They have big green eyes and a terrible roar. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, says the prince. I can see a young man in an attic. He is a writer. He can't write because he is too cold and hungry. Well, I can stay with you another night, says the swallow. Must I take him another ruby? I haven't got a ruby, says the prince. I only have my eyes. They are made of blue sapphires. Take one of the sapphires to him. He can sell it and buy food and firewood. Then he can finish his book. Dear prince, says the swallow, I can't do that. The swallow begins to cry. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, says the prince, do as I say. So the swallow takes out the prince's eye and flies to the writer's attic. When the writer sees the sapphire on his desk, he is very happy. Now I can finish my book, says the young man. The next day the little swallow flies to the port. He looks at all the ships. In the evening he returns to the happy prince. I am here to say goodbye, he says. I am going to Egypt. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, says the prince. Can you stay with me another night? It is winter and it is cold here. In Egypt the sun is warm. My friends are making a nest. Dear prince, I must leave you. Next spring I can bring you a ruby and a sapphire. In the street below, says the happy prince, there is a little match girl. Look, her matches are falling in a puddle of water. Now she can't sell them. She is crying. She is poor and has no shoes. Take my other eye and give it to her. I can stay with you another night, says the swallow. But I can't take out your other eye, because then you can't see. Swallow, swallow, little swallow, says the prince, do as I say. So the swallow takes out the prince's other eye. He flies to the little match girl and puts the sapphire in her hand. What a lovely piece of glass, says the little girl. She laughs and runs home. The swallow returns to the prince. You can't see now. I want to stay with you always. No, little swallow, says the poor prince. You must go to Egypt. I want to stay with you always, says the swallow. Part 3. The Broken Heart. The next day the swallow tells the prince stories about strange places. In Egypt there are red birds called ibises. They stand by the river Nile and catch fish. There is a sphinx, too. It is very old and lives in the desert. It knows everything. There is a big green snake. It sleeps in a palm tree. Dear little swallow, says the prince, you tell me about marvelous things. But misery is the biggest mystery. Fly over the city and tell me what you see. So the little swallow flies over the city. He sees rich people in beautiful houses. He sees poor people in dark streets. He sees hungry children with white faces. They are very cold. He flies back to the prince and tells him everything. I am covered with gold, says the prince. You must take it off. Then we can give the gold to the poor. The swallow takes off the gold, leaf by leaf. He takes it to the poor. Now the prince looks dull and gray. The children's faces are happy. They laugh and play in the streets. We've got bread now. They say, "It is winter and it is very cold." There are some little boys skating on the ice. They are wearing red caps. The poor little swallow is very cold. He does not want to leave the prince. He loves him very much. "Goodbye, dear prince." "I am dying," says the poor little swallow. He kisses the happy prince and dies near his feet. At that moment there is a strange noise inside the statue. The prince's metal heart is breaking. It is certainly very cold. The next morning the mayor of the city looks at the statue. "Dear me. The prince looks very ugly." "Yes. He looks very bad," say the mayor's friends. They always agree with the mayor. There is a dead bird near his feet. Birds must not die here. So they pull down the statue of the happy prince. They melt the statue in a furnace. But the broken heart does not melt. "How strange," says a worker. "The broken heart does not melt in the furnace. We must throw it away." The worker takes the broken heart and puts it near the dead swallow. "Bring me the two most precious things in the city," says God to his angel. The angel brings him the broken heart and the dead bird. "Very well," says God. "In my garden of paradise this little bird can sing and the happy prince can live forever."